Hi, I'm Yvonne, and I'm sorry it took me so long to come up with another video, but I have been diagnosed with leukemia, so it took me a while to process that. It all started with that I had my blood tested for something entirely different, and my type of leukemia is sort of famous for being discovered by chance. So after a few days, my GP called me and she said, "You have a high white blood cell count." And I was, what were white blood cells again? Well, she said it has something to do with the immune system, and usually the count is between 4 and 10, but with you it's 38. Well, that sounded high. And then she said, "You should have it checked." And I thought, well, I agree, that's fine. She said it's way too high. That sounded a bit more alarming. And then she said it could be leukemia. And then the alarm bells started ringing. And I heard myself ask, what does this mean? Am I dead within a year now? And she said, it's usually not that bad. I don't know so much about it. If it is leukemia, of course, it could be a mistake from the laboratory. And then I thought, you're not calling me because of a mistake of the laboratory. Anyway, she referred me to a hematologist. It was such a shock to hear. Suddenly life stands still. It is so weird. 1 minute you're cycling in the sun, you're carefree, you're happy, and the next you have cancer. Your brain cannot comprehend. But I guess there is no right way of telling a person they have cancer. The first thing I did after the phone call was calling my best friend, but he had very little time. And then I called my family, and my youngest brother said, "You could check your electronic file." And I thought that's a good idea. So the first thing I saw was big letters, CLL. And this was the abbreviation my GP had mentioned on the phone. And what are you talking about? What is CLL? Okay, this is chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a type of blood cancer. And then there were all these words and I didn't understand a thing. So I started Googling, which is usually not the smartest thing to do. Like, everybody knows whatever you Google, you have cancer. But it also said in my file, suspect malignant with 3 pluses. And 3 pluses is the highest suspicion of malignant cancer cells. And then I knew this is bad. And I went into survival mode. I felt no hunger, I felt no thirst, I felt no sleep. I lost total track of time. I needed to know more. I wanted to take back control. I wanted to have more information. What is this that I have? So I spent the afternoon and the evening Googling, and I slept for 3 hours that night. And when I woke up at 3 in the morning, in the dark, all alone, my first thought was, I have cancer. And I felt so lonely. I had to wait a week until my first appointment with the hematologist. And I can tell you, this was the worst week of my entire life. There were so many uncertainties and fears. To let a person wait for a week after telling them they might have cancer is almost inhumane, I think. I started thinking, maybe it's my own fault I got CLL, because I have always been very stressed because of my traumas. And I wondered, why do I get this? I mean, I work out every day, I eat well, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. But it's just bad luck. I also felt very sad that finally I am feeling better mentally, and now I have become ill physically. It felt very unfair. I finally gained some self-confidence. I had moving plans. I was flying high, you know, the contrast couldn't have been bigger. I fell so deep. I was so sad. I cried so much. It felt like my whole future fell apart. It made me feel a little less lonely to think about, for example, people like Morten Harket, a beautiful, talented man who became ill as well, or the character of Samantha Jones in Sex and the City, who remained fabulous throughout her illness. You know, like, I'm not the only one. Then the classical every little ache, every little physical sensation feels like a symptom started, and I started to get very scared that my CLL would be active, and I panicked and I thought, what if I need treatment? What if I'm gonna die? And then I knew this is real, raw, genuine fear of death. I mean, not like fear of losing your job or fear of that your boyfriend's gonna end the relationship, or that you're gonna miss the plane. It was facing my mortality. It was so scary. Finally, after a week, the first appointment with the hematologist. Fortunately, a friend who went with me, and the hematologist did a physical exam. He examined my lymph nodes, my spleen, my liver. He listened to my heart, my lungs. He asked about my health, my family's health, my lifestyle. He explained about the 3 types of blood cells, the white blood cells, the red blood cells, the platelets. He even made a drawing. He explained how the bone marrow is the factory of the blood cells, and that he thought it was very likely CLL, but they have to do more tests to be sure. I was very relieved that the dreadful wait was over, and I did have to get used to my new life with visits to the oncology department of the hospital and hospital apps on my phone. I was missing my carefree life. After another week of waiting, I went to the hematologist for the diagnosis, and fortunately, again, another friend went with me. The first thing the hematologist did was to put the box of tissues right in front of me, and I thought, oh, this is going to be bad news. And then he turned the computer screen towards us and started explaining at his ease. And I thought, tell it. You know, I couldn't bear to get more unpleasant surprises, but it was CLL, nothing more, nothing less. The good news with this bad news is that it can remain stable for a long time. If you need treatment, it can be treated well, and it's usually not the heaviest chemotherapy. Some people die with CLL, not from CLL. It can transform into Richter's, which is very serious, but fortunately that's rare. My leukemia is stage 0 now, which means they don't treat it at this moment because a treatment would do more harm than good. And that's what they call watch and wait, or wait and see. You do get regular checkups, and it is chronic, so no treatment does not mean that you are cured. It's impossible to tell how long I've had it, and because CLL affects the immune system, I really have to take care not to get viruses, bacteria, stress, infections. The day after the diagnosis, I expected to feel relieved again like the week before, but I didn't, because this time there was finally room for realizing, okay, this is a new life with CLL. What does this mean for me? Life was the same, yet it was different. A diagnosis like this is life-changing. There is definitely a before and an after, even though I'm not physically ill yet. It has a huge emotional impact because it's tough to live with something that you don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to get worse, and if so, when. Nobody knows. And it's a huge shock to hear that you have an illness that can possibly become life-threatening. I am happy though it got discovered, because now I can take it into account. I can take even better care of myself, and they can take care of me if needed. At that point, I had two big challenges. The first one was people's reactions. Maybe sometimes well meant, but often very painful and awkward, like people denying your feelings. Feelings just are there. You know, it's not something you can do about. People projecting their own fears onto me and putting words into my mouth. People going totally overboard with their own feelings. How bad it is for them to have to hear this news about me. Like, I have to comfort them while I'm the one with cancer. People saying you have to stay positive. Well, I don't have to do anything. Of course I'm trying to stay positive, but I also need room to cry and to process things. People telling you, well, be glad you don't have this or that type of cancer. Of course I know I didn't draw the worst cancer lottery ticket. It doesn't mean it's a picnic. People saying, anybody could die tomorrow. I know nobody gets guarantees in life, but they haven't faced their mortality like I have. For them, it's just a fact. And they don't have the cancer inside their body already. So that's different. People who don't react at all, if you don't know what to say, just say that you don't know what to say, that's fine. Or people who say, it's so difficult for me. Well, man up, because it's more difficult for me. The lack of understanding is also very painful. Like, for example, when I don't want to hug in the middle of the flu season, when I'm 3 days away from my flu shot, I don't want to take that risk. I'm only trying to protect my health. Give me a break. Fortunately, I know now that it says more about the other person and their inability or discomfort, but it's still hurtful. Do not trivialize things for a person with cancer. If there's anybody who's allowed to trivialize things, it's me. And then it's self-regulation. And do not judge me when you have not been in my shoes. Also, it can be difficult to live with an invisible illness because people notice nothing weird about you. So they assume everything's fine. Of course, things have changed. It's tough. So it can feel a little lonely. My other big challenge was how to try to deal with the sort of Damocles, a constant lurking threat. And I wanted to learn to live with something that remains uncertain and unpredictable, and that never goes away, and no one knows what's going to happen. It was tough. Basically, you're trying to make the unbearable bearable. At first, I felt a lot of resistance. I don't want to spend my precious time thinking about fucking cancer. But it's my new reality. So it is what it is. And I was determined to learn to accept it, not push it away, but live in peace with it, without my fears letting take over, and with keeping my life spark. It took me 2 months a lot of courage, a lot of inner strength, a lot of reflecting, facing my fears. But I did it. It doesn't mean that my fears have disappeared, but they don't rule my life anymore. They don't take over. They are there, but I live with them rather than let them hijack me. The day I woke up, that I realized I have managed to build up a sense of safety for myself again. It was a very beautiful and important day. CLL is now part of me. I'm the girl with CLL. When I first heard that I had leukemia, I thought I would never be able to dance carefree again and to laugh again and to sing again. But you know what? I discovered that I can. And that's so precious and so wonderful. Also, I'm thinking about the future again. And I realized that being chronically ill doesn't mean you can't have a meaningful and creative life. All this has also brought something beautiful. Suddenly I can become extremely happy about very small things. They have become extremely valuable, like looking at the stars in the sky, seeing the leaves on the trees being blown by the wind, or feeling the sun on my face. Life can change unexpectedly, and it feels so precious to be alive. Thank you very much for watching and listening. And should you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And see you next time.